Meta falls out of world's top 20 companies. Bitcoin beats gold and oil in third quarter. Britain amends bill to regulate all crypto assets. China running overseas police stations around the world. Germany to legalize cannabis use for recreational purposes. Mexico City government joins Airbnb to lure digital nomads. French leader vows to raise retirement age to 65. UN steps up satellite tracking of damage to Ukraine culture.
Hello, I'm Johnny. Thank you for joining us on FUNDAY News. It's Friday, October 28th, and here are your top stories. Meta said on that Wednesday its third quarter revenue declined 4.5% from a year prior, and in the final 3 months of the year, Meta expects that trend to continue. Its shares tumbled more than 12% in extended trading, and the company is down more than 55% this year. Meta's market value has collapsed by a whopping $677 billion this year, forcing it out from the ranks of the world's 20 largest companies. Its market value is now smaller than the companies, including Chevron, Eli Lilly, and Procter & Gamble.
Today, we're seeing it down about 22% to new multi-year lows we haven't seen since 2016. So let's talk about
Meta was the sixth biggest company in the U.S. with a nearly $1 trillion market value at the beginning of the year. But since Meta invested in virtual reality, its spending started ballooning while revenue declined. Meta now expects total expenses for this year to be $85 billion to $87 billion. For 2023, that number will grow to an expected $96 billion to $101 billion, while value investors are buying its beaten-down stocks in anticipation of a turnaround. Analysts said there is no sign of those bets will pay off anytime soon.
Despite unfavorable macroeconomic headwinds and a stagnant crypto market, Bitcoin managed to outperform equities in most major fiat currencies except the US dollar index in the third quarter of 2022. According to statistics from independent crypto data aggregator CoinGecko, Bitcoin managed to drop 1% quarter over quarter in Q3. The analysis of Bitcoin's performance shows that it managed to outperform crude oil, gold, and the Japanese yen. However, the US dollar index gained 7% over the previous quarter.
With a loss of 85% year-to-date, Bitcoin remains the poorest performing asset. However, FUNDAY reported that Bloomberg commodity strategist Mike McGlone expected that Fed rate hikes would boost Bitcoin to outperform most assets, which turned out to be the case in the third quarter. Specifically, Bitcoin reached a 40-day high when compared with gold. Standing at 0.50, this figure is higher than it was during the middle of August. It may indicate that investors see Bitcoin as becoming a hedge against other losses.
On Thursday, Britain's City Minister Andrew Griffith put forth an amendment to the Financial Services and Markets Bill, which would make Britain have the power to regulate all crypto assets. The bill, as originally drafted, gives the Financial Conduct Authority powers to regulate stable coins only. But the amendment broadens the remit to cover promotions for all crypto assets. It would put Britain more on par with the European Union in terms of crypto asset law.
In the Internet of Things, there will need that fast and smart money, and that's why we need a digital central bank.
The European Union's crypto assets law is now being finalized and is seen as the world's first comprehensive set of rules to regulate the emerging crypto sector. Following the amendment on Thursday, Bank of England Deputy Governor Sam Woods said the central bank was moving forward to create a regulatory framework for systematic stablecoins. This will allow both non-banks and BOE-regulated banks to innovate, and a public consultation paper on the new regime will be published next year.
According to human rights watchdog Safeguard Defenders, China has set up overseas police stations on 5 continents to keep track of its citizens abroad. In a breach of global extradition laws, Safeguard Defenders noted that China's overseas police stations are being used to blackmail suspects into returning home to face criminal charges, and may violate the territorial integrity of third countries by setting up a parallel policing mechanism using illegal methods.
Now, the Chinese police station here, just a few kilometers from me.
Safeguard defenders at the Chinese Communist Party called them 110 overseas police service centers. The BBC reported that the Dutch media found evidence that the overseas service stations, which promise to provide diplomatic services, are being used to try to silence Chinese dissidents in Europe. Canada's CBC reported there are at least 3 Chinese police outposts in and around Toronto in predominantly Chinese neighborhoods. Now, the RCMP says it's investigating whether any criminal activity is taking place.
Struck 它是 strike 这动词的过去式 strike a deal 就是
学习享受一个人的美好时光 FUNDAY 英语
Germany set out plans on Wednesday to make it one of the first countries in Europe to legalize cannabis. Germany's health ministry presented a paper on planned legislation to regulate the controlled distribution and consumption of cannabis for recreational purposes among adults. Ongoing investigations and criminal proceedings connected to cases no longer illegal will be terminated. Germany will present the paper to the European Commission for pre-assessment and will only draft the law once the Commission approves the plan.
According to the paper, private self-cultivation will be permitted to a limited extent. Acquiring and possessing 20 to 30 grams of recreational cannabis for personal consumption would also be made legal. The German government will also introduce a special consumption tax and develop cannabis-related education and abuse prevention programs. A survey found last year legalizing cannabis could bring Germany annual tax revenues and cost savings of about 4.7 billion euros, $4.7 billion, and create 27,000 new jobs.
Mexico City government officials signed an agreement with short-term rental platform Airbnb on Wednesday to boost the number of digital nomads in the capital. Asked about complaints over rising rents, Mayor Claudia Sheinbaum said most digital nomads choose to stay in expensive neighborhoods where the rent is already higher than in other areas of the capital. The partnership between Mexico City's government and Airbnb is also backed by UNESCO, United Nations cultural agency.
Digital nomads are people working online remotely rather than in an office, often in another country. FUNDAY News reported on June 7th that countries like Argentina and Indonesia have unveiled their plans to attract digital nomads. According to data from market research company AirDNA, the average daily rate for a short-term rental in Mexico City was about $93 in August 2022. Mayor Sheinbaum said Airbnb is also opening its platform for Mexican residents to create tourism experiences around daily activities of digital nomads.
On Wednesday, French President Emmanuel Macron vowed to implement a pension reform that would push up the retirement age by 3 years to 65. Macron said the changes would start being applied next year. He added the minimum retirement age to get a full pension will be gradually increased from 62 now to 65 by 2031. Since most opposition parties, as well as workers' unions, are opposed to the pension changes, Macron said he is open to discuss the retirement age with unions and make potential amendments.
All French workers receive a state pension. Macron said not implementing these changes would mean the government would need to decrease the size of pensions. While such measures would apply to people who worked enough to qualify, those who do not fulfill the conditions, like many women who interrupt their career to raise their children, must currently work until 67. On Wednesday, Macron offered to ally with lawmakers from opposition parties to pass domestic reforms in parliament, including the proposed pension changes.
The United Nations cultural and satellite agencies have joined forces to systematically track the impact of Russia's invasion on Ukraine's architecture, art, historic buildings, and other cultural heritage. Agencies have already compiled an initial list of more than 200 sites that have been damaged or destroyed. Fortunately, while some 205 sites were listed, none of Ukraine's 7 UNESCO World Heritage sites have been affected as of Wednesday, October 26th.
The media reported that Geneva-based UNICEF and Paris-based Educational, Scientific and Cultural Agency UNESCO announced Wednesday that they were finalizing a database of cultural sites that compares before and after images bought from private sector satellite companies. These will be used to inform experts in a first phase and eventually the wider public about the devastation wreaked on Ukraine's culturally significant sites. However, UNESCO experts haven't had access to areas under Russian occupation while compiling their initial reports.
FUNDAY News will help you sharpen your English skills and keep you informed about international current events. If you want to know more about our other programs and keep learning about the world's most important topics in English, please click the link in the description below to join FUNDAY for free. I'm Johnny Wu, your host. I will see you next time.